Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and explore how pure, relentless curiosity can completely rewrite our perception of reality. I mean, we live in a world that often feels totally chaotic, overwhelming, and let's be honest, rigidly boxed into these pre-made systems. But what if the secret to breaking free from that mundane cycle isn't some grand, sweeping gesture? What if it's just shifting how we look at totally ordinary things? Today, we're unpacking some fascinating insights from a creator who literally walked away from a corporate career and multiple degrees for one simple reason, to just ask why. And in doing so, they built this massive, incredible community of curious minds. Now think about the number 100,000. It's not just a metric, right? It's not just a subscriber count on a screen. That number represents 100,000 unique individual lives. That's 100,000 completely different childhoods, distinct daily experiences, and wildly diverse perspectives. And all these individual realities are connecting through this one shared desire to learn and just look at the world a little bit differently. When you stop looking at crowds as just data points and start seeing them as individual breathing stories, the sheer scale of human connection is absolutely mind-blowing. And the real-world impact of this shared curiosity? It's honestly incredibly touching. There's this one father who shared that he watches these explainer videos with his 6-year-old daughter. Think about that. This mindset completely bridges generations. It even convinces people who used to absolutely dread science class to happily spend their entire weekend binging content about space. It just goes to show that when information is presented through a lens of genuine wonder, rather than, forced textbook memorization, it resonates with literally everyone. Let's rewind a bit. Picture the creator as a 10-year-old girl sitting on a terrace. This is way before the internet was in our pockets. She's just sitting there observing bird flight patterns, figuring out where they're going, and then holding pretend classes to teach her stuffed animals everything she just discovered. And she did it purely for the joy of it. The actual school curriculum, that was just a tiny fraction of what she really wanted to learn. Her curiosity was completely boundless because it wasn't tied to passing a test. And that is exactly where society's rigid education system completely misses the mark. If you focus purely on grades, scores, and numbers, you actually defeat the entire purpose of learning something new. You just memorize to pass, not to understand. But when you flip the script and shift your focus back to pure curiosity, you quickly realize the world isn't divided into neat little academic boxes. Everything is naturally, beautifully interconnected. Through that curious lens, the mundane literally becomes magical. Let's take algebra. Most people run in the opposite direction, right? Yet using alphabets to manipulate simple math allows us to analyze super complex things, like audience retention rates. Or take something as basic as flipping a light switch. Electricity travels thousands of kilometers in a fraction of a second just to light up your room. For almost all of human history, that kind of instant light was pure magic. People just lived in the dark. Today, it's an everyday marvel that we take completely for granted. But as we grow up, we stop marveling at that light switch. We just stop asking questions. Instead, we fall into what you could call the system trap. You know the drill. Follow the rules to get into a good school, secure a reliable job, and make good enough money. And eventually, you get so deeply entrenched in this structure that you actually help reinforce it for the next generation. Before you know it, you forget that within this system, you're merely surviving. You completely lose sight of the fact that you're supposed to actually live your life every single day. And this survival mindset exposes us to a massive, mostly unseen environmental hazard, the sheer, overwhelming negativity we constantly consume. The creator points out this experience of sitting down with family and watching 4 or 5 hours of highly rated television dramas. Now, despite having hundreds of millions of views, these shows were entirely focused on sadness, hopelessness, and conflict. Constantly feeding on this kind of negativity, it doesn't just entertain you for the evening, it actively shapes your entire worldview. Science actually backs this up. It's a classic case of building neural pathways. It's basically monkey see, monkey do for your brain. The more negative media you consume, the more your brain builds and strengthens connections based on that exact sensory input. If you're constantly watching betrayal and sadness, your brain wires itself to expect exactly that in reality. You start perceiving negative intentions in your family, your friends, literally everyone around you, even when there's absolutely zero reason to. You literally become what you consume. But here is the absolute game changer. You can reverse engineer this entire process. If you consciously shift your focus to what is positive and healthy, if you actively remind yourself of the good things going on in your life, it works like magic. By feeding your brain positive sensory input, your daily life literally feels easier. Your mood lifts, your productivity shoots up, and suddenly the people around you seem so much nicer. Your reality actually changes because your biological lens has changed. Now, consider the ripple effect of global events on this mindset. Let's say a major geopolitical conflict occurs, like tensions between the US and Iran. Obviously, this is entirely out of our individual control. Yet, it causes petrol prices to spike locally in places like Pakistan, which leads to inflation and a lot of daily stress. If you're only focused on the negative news loop, you get consumed by anxiety over things you literally cannot change. It becomes this never-ending cycle of frustration. So instead of being consumed by the doom and gloom of those rising petrol prices, we need to shift our focus and find the underlying pattern. The creator suggests a really interesting pivot. While inflation definitely hurts, you can observe how that exact same geopolitical event is driving shifts in global financial markets. There's an opportunity hidden there. Ask yourself how you can leverage an understanding of those stock market movements to potentially offset your own financial losses. It's all about moving from being a passive victim of circumstance to an active, curious observer. By simply asking why, this chaotic world starts to become incredibly clear. I mean, economies do not move randomly. Technology doesn't just evolve for no reason. Human behaviors follow predictable patterns based on incentives and trade-offs. Once you truly understand that everything is a massive interconnected web of cause and effect, the world stops being this scary, unpredictable monster. It becomes a fascinating puzzle that you can actually begin to figure out. Which leads us to the core belief driving this entire philosophy. All problems, big and small, can be fixed through education. And to be clear, we are not talking about memorizing textbook facts to get an A. We're talking about true education, critical thinking, the ability to ask really deep questions, and the vision to see way beyond the immediate negativity and those restrictive systems society has built around us. And honestly, this is exactly why talking to people who completely disagree with you is so invaluable. We all tend to sit in our own little bubbles, firmly believing we have all the answers. But how could we? When you sit down and have a real conversation with someone who holds entirely different beliefs, you aren't just arguing. You're getting a free ticket to experience a totally different belief system. You get to learn from a lifetime of experiences that you never had to live through yourself. It's a superpower. Understanding this completely shatters one of society's biggest, most persistent lies, the idea that one person cannot make a difference. We are constantly told we're just tiny cogs in a massive machine. But when you really zoom out and think critically about how we actually process our existence, that concept makes absolutely zero sense. And this ties directly into some truly mind-bending concepts from quantum physics. Think about it. The external world, society, global events, is all just sensory input being processed inside your brain. Physics suggests that reality is deeply intertwined with the observer. Your memories, your past, your experiences, they all exist exclusively inside your head. So, because you are the one generating your perception, if you change your mindset, you literally change the world you experience. To really wrap our heads around the profound nature of our existence and our individual power, let's look at one of the most famous images in human history, the pale blue dot. This was a photograph taken by the Voyager 1 space probe as it was leaving our solar system, floating about 6 billion kilometers away. It turned its camera around to take one last snapshot of Earth. And in that vast, dark photograph, Earth is smaller than a single pixel. But think about what's inside that speck. On that tiny, microscopic dot, suspended in a vast and endless universe, is everything. Every civilization that ever rose and fell. Every empire, every war ever fought. Every billionaire, every brilliant scientist, every struggling artist. Every single person you have ever met, loved, or vehemently disagreed with. They all lived out their entire lives on that tiny fraction of a pixel. It really puts all of our daily stresses and societal systems into a breathtaking perspective, doesn't it? Ultimately, this explainer is a call to view our world through a lens of unyielding curiosity. When you take a step back and look at the big picture, you realize that every ordinary thing around us has an absolutely extraordinary story behind it. Every answer you find doesn't end the journey. It just leads you to a fascinating new question. And honestly, that is the true joy of learning. So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with one vital question to think about. Are you content with just surviving in the rigid systems built by society? Or are you ready to start asking why and actually experience life? How will you shift your perspective today to start building a community of curious, positive thinkers? The choice, as always, is entirely up to you.